Andras and myself are here to present today the RDA adoption grant results we have in Hungary at the moment. It is it is a running project at the moment. Due to the COVID situation, we got an extension until the end of September, so we are trying to catch up what we couldn't really finish in the spring period. It's basically two separate projects processes combined under one submission. So we joined efforts, the two institutions joined efforts to develop a data management package which guides the users to use the RDA compliant data repositories and provide some guidelines for the uploading and archiving data in these repositories. Our primary tasks here is basically running on two separate parallel lines. On the one hand, working on the data publishing workflows, and on the other hand, there are some tasks on the repository audit and certification processes. Andras will talk about that a little bit. So on the data publishing workflow, there are several steps we wanted to process. First, due to the language barriers that a lot of Hungarian researchers face, we found it's really important to translate these recommendations into our national language in order to reach a more wider audience. So that was the first step we did. On our part, we translated data workflows, workgroup recommendations, and we prepared some dissemination materials based on that, which is disseminated at different training events. And the next step was to somehow put these recommendations into practice, and we linked to the data repository, which is under development at the University of Debrecen, and it is in the test mode at the moment. It's the beta version is already up and running, and we put these recommendations to the front page of the repository in order to be accessible to for the researchers. And one of the main objective of this grant is basically taking these results and making it into a wider context, and join the national dialogue on data management, which is actually, it is now started last year. Some efforts, combined efforts were made in order to reach Hungarian researchers, and even with the help of the ministry, or in cooperation with the ministry and the Academy of Sciences, we started a communication on data management on the national level. So I will show really quickly the data repository, the front page. That it is in a test version, so we have only a few researchers using it or testing it at the moment. It's a Dataverse-based, a customized platform, and we are trying to develop a really interoperable up to international standards. We have already asked some user feedback from the researchers that they used, and it seems to be it's an easy, user-friendly platform. Some problem occurred with the file format, but otherwise I think it will be up and running pretty soon. And if you see it on the right hand corner, there is the upload guide, which I will magnify a little bit. This is based on the RDA recommendations. There is a concise upload guide for researchers, and the whole translation of the extended recommendation is disseminated through an open access .hu website, which is basically it's a website that we coordinate in our university for researchers on open access issues. So, and just a couple of words about the national dialogue that started last year. Hungary had a submission for the node role, and it was a successful application. So there is already up and running the HRDE, which is a Hungarian RDA node, and we are part of this community that coordinating the tasks and processes related to Hungarian data management. So we are trying to join efforts there. And the other main issue that we, based on the requirements and in cooperation with the ministry, the National Research, Development and Innovation Office, there was a survey conducted among researchers on data management practices, and received quite a high respondent rate, almost 1,000 respondents sent in, and based on the results there, we see that sharing and publishing data is it's quite well accepted, but it's still not as common as we would like it to be. So we still have a lot to go in Hungary, but actually it is already talked about and accepted in some way. And I really want to emphasize that even the RDA recommendations says the emphasis on repositories and the development and improvement of repositories. It's really a really important element of the data publishing and data management processes. So we trying to concentrate on that part to get as many repository development as possible in Hungary and in our institutions as well. So with this, I will hand over to András.
Hello, everybody. Thank you. I try to be very quick. The other thread of the Hungarian project was mainly about repository certification. We set up to adopt the repository audit and certification partnership working group recommendations of the RDA. But before I go into details, I'd like to speak about the general background. In Hungary, as Edith has mentioned, they are developing at the University of Debrecen a real data repository. We have already a couple of data centers, or some of them we could even call a repository running in the field of social sciences. But mainly what we have in Hungary are publication repositories, and those publication repositories do have some data deposits as well. The situation is rather different than in the UK or in the US or in Western Europe. The general level of financing is much less. Sustainability and financing questions, I'm afraid, are rather different than some other parts of the world. And we don't even have a national data policy yet. The next slide, please.
Sorry.
So we set up to translate those recommendations. We have discussed those recommendations in our repository certification committee. The existence of such a committee is, I think, a really positive thing I can tell you about, because we already had a Hungarian repository certification system. So we have the foundations on which we can build the certification of data repositories. We started a pilot project there. We dealt with two repositories of one data center, and we had the initial submission of self-assessment from that institution, and discussing with the problems they had with the self-assessment form. We are awaiting the final submission and request for certification. We hope that we will be able to issue the first certifications, and then we can move on, maybe to certificate the new repository the University of Debrecen is setting up at the moment. Of course, we have to do a lot of adjustment. It was a learning process because Hungarian repositories are not really well advanced in adopting the most modern FAIR principles, but we hope that in this process we can a little bit improve the research data culture in our country. The next slide, please. This is just a screenshot from the repository, one of the repositories we are certifying. This is a repository in the field of social sciences. And in the final slide, you see that another task in front of us is trying to improve the existing publication repositories and connect them to the onboarding process of OpenAir and the European Open Science Cloud project, which Hungary participates in. We have some obstacles, but again, we see this as a learning process. And my last thoughts are, what could we expect in the sense of research data, handling research data from general publication repositories? I think those repositories can play a role as well. They can very well store and share data supplements to those publications deposited there. The quality control for those data sets would be really the peer review process for the publication. The idea set up would be that an author submitting a publication to a journal submits to our publication repository the data set the article is based on. And then the link, the DOI is shared with the referees. And after the acceptance of the paper, a copy of the paper is also deposited and to the repository and linked to the dataset. Of course, data repositories could handle only simple data formats and small volumes, a small number of files, and small size data sets. We were never be able to handle petabytes of data. Publication repositories can have limited responsibilities. We could accept data deposits as is. We cannot really do intensive curation of those data sets. And the goals for those deposits is mainly increasing the reproducibility of research rather than effective reuse. But still, I believe that publication repositories can have a role in the broad landscape of research data. Thank you very much.